What's up, YouTube? We got two rack mount computers on the coffee table today. Although the form factor is similar, both of these computers are intended for a different purpose, so I'm going to take a look at each of these systems individually and talk about each one a little bit with the help of some of my kitty friends, of course. And also I picked up this 1050 Ti off Craigslist. I think I paid $60 for it, so they're going for about $120 on eBay right now, so pretty decent deal. But I do need to plug it in and just make sure it works. This is the first computer I wanted to take a look at today, and to me it's the more interesting of the two. The motherboard is an Asus Prime B250, a B250MC revision 1.01. The processor in this computer is a G3900, if I remember correctly. It's just a Skylake Celeron, pretty much the least powerful one you can buy. But the function this computer serves is just a music player and internet streaming box, basically. This lives in a little rack in my bedroom and just plays a signal out of it all the time to my stereo system, so whenever I turn it on, I have music right there. The heatsink in this is a Arctic Cooling. I don't remember the specific model, but it adds a little bit of silence over the sometimes noisy stock Intel fan. The onboard audio has been supplanted by this M-Audio Delta 66 sound card, which also connects to this breakout box here. And the power supply in this system is an Antec Earth Watts. It's a 380 watt power supply. I probably should change this out. These are known to have bad capacitors, but this one's been pretty reliable so far. This system has been running continuously for over a year now and hasn't had a single hiccup. Forgot to mention the memory is some HyperX Predator. I believe it's 2133, which is the fastest supported by this chip, if I remember correctly. So just a pretty low power system overall. I actually have the SSD, which is a Kingston 120 gigabyte. It's mounted down there in an extra location. That location can actually support a 3.5 inch drive, but these up here are only 2.5 inch drives, so not as much options as the other two rack mount cases I own as far as drive expansion, but really not too bad a case overall. I'm just using the two front fans, and the only exhaust fan is the one on the power supply. That's actually the reason I have this case out of the rack. These Silent-X fans I added move a good bit more air than the stock fans and tend to clog this filter up. That's another, I would say, design flaw with this case. There's not really any good way to access the front cooling fan filter to clean it, and it does clog up rather quickly. You actually have to see if we can even get down in there. I don't know if we can. Okay, there. Well, you guys will just have to take my word, but it's not fun to remove the fan mounting bracket and get that filter out to clean it. Alright, I went ahead and installed that GTX 1050 Ti superclocked, and I'm going to go ahead and give it a power on test here in a second. Since it's a Craigslist purchase, I'm a little apprehensive. Usually these kind of parts are pretty safe. Normally I don't use this computer with a discrete graphics card. I just use the onboard graphics because as this computer stays on 24/7 and doesn't do any kind of 3D graphics activities, really add-on graphics card would just be a waste. And also, I forgot to mention when I was giving the rundown of the parts, it also has just a basic light-on DVD burner drive. But without further ado, go ahead and power it on. This is actually my second attempt because the first attempt, the HDMI cable, was not connected at either end, and I was a little bit confused as to why I wasn't getting any picture on the monitor. But we'll go ahead and flip the switch. This computer is configured to come on after a power loss automatically. So as soon as I turn the power supply to on, I should get some kind of picture on the screen if I did not get burned. So here we go. Alright, well, that's a good sign. The operating system on this computer, if I remember correctly, is Linux Mint 18.3. Actually boots up pretty quickly considering it's just a little slow dual core processor in here. And I'm going to go ahead and hook up some speakers and an amplifier and just do a quick audio test for you guys before I move on to the next system. Alright, we'll go ahead and test the audio on this computer. That's what its primary use is. Here's the second computer we'll be looking at today. This is actually an incomplete build. This case is a 4-rack unit Rosewell case. I really like this case. It's probably my favorite so far out of the 3 rack mount cases I own. It's very sturdy, very solidly constructed. The drive cages are pretty basic, simple design. It can accommodate up to 6 hard drives. It's also got a auxiliary mounting point on top here for a 2.5-inch drive, like a thin SSD. It has 2 5.25-inch bays. Here's the hardware that's actually in here right now. Everything is in this build except for the hard drives. This is intended to be a free NAS build. It's just using some eBay hardware, not necessarily anything server grade. The Asus TUF Z270 motherboard. The processor is a Pentium G4400T. For those of you not familiar with the T variant Intel chips, the T designates low power consumption version of the chips, which, since this system will, once it's completed, stay on 24/7, I wanted something that didn't generate much heat or consume much power. So I think that'll work really nicely. Also, this computer has this really nice Seasonic Focus Platinum Plus 550 watt power supply. It's a fully modular supply, obviously platinum rated. Really quite a nice power supply. Although I will say that EVGA gives you quite a few more extras with their modular power supplies, but no complaints. This one actually has a hybrid mode, which is not completely fanless operation, but nearly fanless. I think only under like above 70% load the fan will kick on in the hybrid mode. This case does not have any front fans currently installed, although it does have a spot in the front for a 120mm fan. It has 2 rear 80mm fans. And even though these things are pretty noisy, they're not going to be in any of my living spaces when this computer's running. And these things really do move a lot of air, these fans that come stock with a case, so I think I'll probably leave those in here. The main thing that this case has going for it over the other 2 rack cases I use, the one for my pro audio and for my bedroom audio systems, this computer case actually has an easily removable, I've got quite a few threads on the screw, but the front fan filter is very easy to remove to clean. So there it is right there, no issue. You can take it out, wash it, put it back. So much better than disassembling the entire case and pulling out the fan brackets just to do some routine maintenance that you know you're going to have to do once or twice a year minimum. It's just got front USB 2. The Athena Power case we looked at earlier actually has an option to swap this little module out for a USB 3.0 module. I'm not sure if that's offered as a feature with this case or not. But overall, I do really like this case. I just have 2 minor gripes about it. One is that the screws that mount the top cover are very flimsy and I'd say pretty prone to stripping. They don't really inspire a lot of confidence that they'll hold up over time, you know, especially if you have to have this case out a couple times to swap parts or whatever you want to do with it. The other gripe I have which, you know, really for a case, I think this case was under $70 with shipping, if I remember correctly, off Newegg. So for a 4-unit case, that's not bad. So maybe I'm being a little too critical at this price point, but as you can see, the slot blanks are just the breakaway kind, which, you know, it's not something I'm a huge fan of, but for the setup I'm probably going to be using, I probably won't even need to detach any of these blanking plates. I may, if I end up going up to 8 hard drives eventually, because I'll need to add a separate SATA controller card because this motherboard only has 6 SATA ports on it. But once I have a little more coin in my pocket, I'm probably just going to go ahead and purchase 6 4 or 6 terabyte drives and run something like RAID 5 and call it a day. The purpose of this computer will be to stream Blu-rays and music and really whatever I want to any of my devices at home, because I've got quite a bit of data spread out across quite a few hard drives at this point in time, and it gets to be a bit of a headache, and also you run the risk of accidentally deleting things because you're not really sure where they're located. So really not too much else to say about this computer. All it's done so far is just run a couple of test passes of MemTest 86. Let's see, the memory down there is G.Skill Sniper X. I believe this is 2400 megahertz. Actually, I picked up this memory. This is a little cheesy, but this memory is actually designed to match this motherboard. So, and also this memory is definitely on the less expensive side. It was only a few dollars more than the least expensive memory that you could buy at 2400 megahertz. And don't mind that Western Digital SATA SSD. The drive I'll be using for this computer is going to be a PCI type SSD, so I don't disable any of my onboard SATA ports. I do have 2 minor complaints about this Asus Z270 motherboard. The first complaint is that even though this board is listed as a standard ATX board, it's actually a 1/4 inch too short to use this last row of standoffs down here. So there's 3 standoffs that are just a little bit past the edge of the motherboard there, so it's a bit disappointing. I don't see why they didn't just extend it the rest of the way. They give it a lot more support that way. It's not a deal breaker. It does have a lot of nice attributes about this board that I do really like. But the other gripe I have is that this board only has digital outputs for display. It doesn't have any analog video output, so it's a bit of a bummer. Going back to some of the positives of this motherboard, I do really like the M.2 drives are actually mounted with this standoff. I don't know, it's kind of hard to get the camera in there to show, but they probably have about 3/8 of it, or a 1/4 inch, 3/8 of an inch clearance off the motherboard, so definitely going to cool a lot better like that. And that's something I haven't seen on my other motherboards, even the other ones I have that are targeted for gamers. And also, my choice of hardware for this build, some people may not agree with it, but this was a pretty nice, pretty well featured motherboard, and it was a great price on eBay as an open box, and being, you know, a little bit of an older chipset now. So really for $60, I'm not going to complain for a brand new motherboard. It will work great, I think, for a FreeNAS board. But for right now, this build, like I said, is just going to be shelved until I have a little bit more money to purchase the drives I need, because hard drive prices are pretty stable and haven't dropped off in recent times like, you know, some of the other things like memory modules have. Alright, I finally managed to get all the power switches turned on, and you can see I'm running MemTest 86 now. It's the G4400T. It's running pretty cool. It would actually be a little bit lower, I think, if the top cover was installed. A little note about this processor: I purchased it from a company online called FullySilentPCs.com, and I got a really nice deal on it. It was $35 shipped, and it was brand new. It was a tray processor. It didn't come with a heatsink or anything like that, but I thought the price was pretty good considering that's when they had a bit of a CPU shortage on some of the lower power Intel chips. And really, not too much else to say about this build. I think it'll be a perfect setup for a FreeNAS server to stream all my media to my home network. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a comment down below and subscribe if you haven't already. And stay tuned, there'll be plenty more computers and audio systems here in the future.